Hey guys, and welcome to this short tutorial on using these practice cards. My name is Anuvrat Choudhary and I created these as a result of my own experiments with practicing the piano over the years. And through a lot of workshops I've attended, through a lot of teachers I've had the good fortune of studying with, these cards are something very easy to use, and they require very little effort and time, but they can actually significantly help how we structure our practice sessions and how we make the most use of the practice that we do. The reason I'm focusing so much on practice is because a student very often has lessons once a week, and for the rest of the week they're by themselves practicing. So about 80% of the work is actually done in between lessons, and I would just like for all students to make the most out of that time, and so that they enjoy their practice journey as much as they enjoy playing music. So just a brief introduction on how to use these cards is that first we need to actually put our phones away, because despite how good technology is and how much easier it's made our life, it is very easy to get distracted by our phones. And research has suggested that through one notification or through one distraction, it can take up to about 15 to 20 minutes for our brains to refocus to the task we were doing at hand. So I would highly urge you all to put your phones aside, put your electronic devices aside, and bring out a new card. On this new card, there's very little space, but there's space for 5 things. And through my experiments, I think 5 things are more than enough during a practice session. If we can narrow it down, say we're focusing on 4 bars of a piece, and we write it down, I'm going to practice these 4 bars or these 8 bars, and so on and so forth. Having 5 things on a card is more than enough. Just that much can actually lead to a very effective practice session. One thing that it does is that it forces us to actually think and plan our practice sessions beforehand. And given the fact that there's very little space on these cards, it is something that will not take a lot of time or effort. From my experience, it does not take more than 1 to 2 minutes to prepare one card. I have tried and made these cards small and convenient for you to always carry on you. The size of these cards is very small, so you can include them in your scores. You can always have them on your piano, just like it is over there on my piano. I've just got a little deck of cards always sitting at the piano so that I can immediately pull one out, put it in front of me. After having filled out those, we can use them as a tool to refocus our attention when we're practicing in our practice rooms. At the back of every one of these cards, there is a little notes section, which is again another physical tool so that we do not get distracted by the world of our phones and on those notifications. So let's say there's been many instances where I've been practicing and I wanted to look up a technique on, or videos or explanations on, say, octaves. And I would go onto YouTube, I would say, okay, Josh Wright, who's done a video on octaves, then YouTube would recommend another video by Graham Fitch, or this kind of a thing carries on from one video to the next video to the next video, and suddenly I'm out of 15 minutes with very little practice done. So this little section of notes at the back can actually help me to make a note of the fact that, okay, I need to go look up videos on how to play octaves better, which I can do later, and this would not distract me from my practice in the session. These notes can also be used as a section for questions or problems that you have, which you can ask your teacher later in the next lesson that you have. And these I've found through my experiences that it makes their life easier, because they don't have to listen to me playing the whole thing before they can diagnose what the problems are. If there are some things that make me uncomfortable, I can discuss it with them ahead of time. So all of this information, or all of these thoughts, musings, questions we have in our practice sessions can all be taken down and recorded on these cards, which can be used in many different ways. So on the cards that you've got in the how to use section, I've said that you could color the circles, color the notes according to how satisfied you are, but there are many more different ways. You could put smileys on it, you could put sad faces on it if you're not happy, you could put angry faces if there's something that is particularly tricky and infuriating, and that's okay. But it's good to know what you're feeling when you're practicing a certain part, because that is also something that can influence your practice. And discussing those with your teachers can also help prepare you better for your next practice. You could also use stickers. Having those markers or having a sticker on there can stick those days out, and then you can reflect and you can think backwards. You could use that to design your ideal practice template. So over the years, what I've found is that mornings are usually best for me to learn a new piece. My brain's fresh, my brain's much more focused in the morning. Early in the mornings, my fingers are also not always warmed up. So just spending a little more time getting my fingers active and using all of that time to think through the music, to think through the notes that I'm learning, is something I've found for myself. I was making note of how I used to practice when I used to practice. So these are things, this is one tool which can also help you optimize what your perfect practice session might be. Let's assume that on one day you wrote down 5 things that you'd want to get out of your practice session. And just the way I've got it here, we've got 5 things written. So even if I'm spending just 5 minutes on one point, that actually leads to 5-minute sessions, which is a 25-minute long practice. In my opinion, that's a good amount of time and a good amount of practice to be done. You could even spend 10 minutes on each section. You could spend 15 minutes on some of the harder ones and about 10 minutes on some less tricky ones. But my point is that just having this gives you a kind of a map of where to go to after what do you want to do after each section. Another thing that it does is that it's a visual practice tracker, so that music is one of those things which learning pieces and all is something that takes a long time. Cards like this are also a visual tracker for you to see that, okay, last week I wasn't able to do all of these, but by this week I can. Or this was something that would infuriate me. If you're using emojis like angry faces or frown faces or whatever, you can actually see that, okay, last week this passage was something that would annoy me or I would get infuriated, but this week it's a lot more comfortable. And these things can actually boost our motivation when we're practicing. I have attached some sample images of the different ways I have used these cards in some images on this website. So please feel free to go through them. Definitely please share your experience using these cards if you found some things to be working particularly well for you, or if you have any feedback or suggestions for me to improve this further for more musicians, because a lot of musicians, they enjoy playing. I used to be one of them, but practice used to sometimes get so difficult that it would make the playing become harder. Through these different experiments, I've made my practice sessions a lot more effective, and I've just started enjoying not just the playing part, not just the concertizing part, not just the deciding new repertoire and starting working at it, but also the practice. So thank you. Please do leave a comment or a feedback below once you've experimented with this, because I would love to hear your thoughts on these cards. What was good, what worked for you, what did not work for you, what was difficult to use, or some of the things that worked really well for you. I hope that these cards help you as much as they helped me, and happy practicing.